people don't respect your conditions for connecting.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also what I'm listening for is what's important to you. What's the mode that I can speak that you can receive, and where I feel the flow.
Yes.
And if I don't feel the flow, that's what I attend to first, not the content.
Abs, you know what I really liked about this episode is when I brought up this idea that I was in a fight with a friend and that the boundary that I violated, that I didn't know that there was a boundary there. I thought the way Katie answered it was really practical and really useful. What do you think?
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree. I think this happens, right? When we find out about someone's boundary after the fact, but we're held responsible for holding that line. It feels unfair, and that's where resentment breeds in. So I loved just how you both addressed how we express those boundaries beforehand and how we communicate after the disruption. I think those were some really critical tools that all of us can use.
I loved it. And another thing that was really helpful to me is how I felt taken care of, to have someone truly listen to what had not worked and not judge and just kind of give me very practical ways that I could almost organize my own thoughts around it. Was really, really helpful on this one. So go watch this one. It's a really, really good one.
Enjoy.
Hello, Katie.
Hello, Sophie. Love seeing you in this interplay between you and your background behind you.
I noticed this morning that I was natural. I didn't think of it, but I'm wearing mushrooms and I'm sitting in this field, like how I'm off the field.
Yeah, you're growing.
I love that. And I'm proliferating in a good way. Mycelium I'm having. So I had a difficult experience this week, and I thought I would love to give you a little context, as much and as little as you need to hear, so you guide me a little bit. And I was hoping you could help me and guide me through, processing what's happening, because I have a good.
First of all, I want to appreciate you for being willing to share something that sounds like it's vulnerable for you. And I don't know what you're going to say. And for me, that is also, being able to discover with somebody, a learning edge. Oh, that's just one of my favorite things. So I'm all set.
It's funny because as it was happening, the couple people were like, "What are you going to do? What are you going to say?" And I was like, "I need to talk to Katie." I didn't know. I mean, I have my own sense, but I thought it'd be really cool to bring it before it's complete, so we can work, deconstruct together. I thought that was really cool. So here comes. I have a couple of dear friends. They're a couple, and we have been friends for a long time. And for context, I've been very present for them. Like I've done many, many, many phone calls to support them in their career and their choices and all. So it's felt very generous in the flow. That's the context. Now, a new partner has come in my life with a business project, and I brought them in as in a good potential to work together and potentially be part of the start of this new startup. And we did 3 phone calls, and their contribution was such that my co-partner, it didn't start from me, but my co-partner was like, I don't think they're adding much to the project, that they agreeing, approving, they're saying yes and no, but they're really not coming with what I would want someone who's showing their interest is showing up. And
yes, and also their own creative input to the co-creative catalyzing. And
my sense is they probably felt they did contribute based on how it evolved, but we didn't. So on this end, I don't know when is a good idea for me to even acknowledge one of my mistakes. And you know me long enough to know what I'm about to say probably is I let people in quickly. I was very quick. I was a little too quick probably to be like, oh my God, we could be partner on this. And, I was a little too quick in the picture, imagining a vision and a future where we would all be together. And so, but that's also how I express my enthusiasm.
Yeah. And the other thing I want to just underline at this point of the context is that opening and that generosity, and the seeing the ability, that openness, if it doesn't have the steps to get there for the other person, I think that's part of where because they may not be able to make that intuitive leap in the same way that you do.
Yes. And I think because I'm unusually open that way, but I don't think others are not. And so I think they think that if they were that open with someone, it would mean more than maybe it could have meant for me.
Yes.
But, okay. So then after me and the co-founder spoke, they're my friends. And so I felt the one responsible to go back to them and communicate. And the way I chose to communicate, because time was what it was, the time difference, my schedule at the moment, I did it by text. And so I wrote a text that was very, very kind, very, very loving, but a little bit like the way it's evolving, it looks like our partnership may take a different shape. And I said, at this point, I feel like what we need is more a co-founder that's available, blah, blah. And I listed like what I thought they didn't really bring.
Yes.
In a subtle way. I thought it was pretty direct, but it was kind of also maybe subtle, that it was not just, I just changed my mind. It was very much the way you showed up, did not inspire us to say, you're it. And it didn't, so no response. For like a whole week, no response to my texts. So at the time, I don't think we have a problem yet, right? So a few days later, after that week passes, I sent another text saying, I woke up this morning with and I followed your guidance. I was like, my chest feels really tight and I'm having a sense that our river is not flowing. Maybe you're just busy, but can you respond or communicate with me to let me know how what I said landed? Because I want to make sure our river is flowing. So let me know. All right, no response for another week.
Wow.
So by now I'm like, whoa, did something actually happen?
Did something wrong? And
I did go to the first week I went to this something wrong. The second week I went to, what did I do? I did something wrong. So maybe a week later, I get a text, very formal, hello, Sophie, which is not at all the way we've been communicating. We're glad to hear that you're progressing well. We are sad and disappointed that you chose to communicate with us. No, we felt like you took advantage of us. And because of the way you communicated, we feel like this relationship needs to come to a stop or a break. And wish you well. And so I felt really sad. I felt really, the place I went to as well was almost weirdly mental for me. Like I was feeling my feelings, but I was also going in my head with I actually prefer email. Like when someone has difficult news to tell me, I like that I have a minute to process. Like I don't really like being in front of you as you telling me something that's really hard to hear. It's not better or worse, it's just different ways.
Yeah, different ways also of receiving a communication.
Yeah. So as my own self criticism or feedback, I wish I had said, I have something I'd like to communicate with you that's a little difficult. What would you like? How would you like me to communicate with you? I could have been, a little bit more proactive that way.
Yes. And I'm just remembering something that we discovered in our work many years ago is that when someone is not willing to receive feedback, one of the things they'll do is to criticize the way it's communicated.
The way the feedback was given.
Right. And I remember in my own, relationship with Gay, when, I would have the sense of, well, did you have to tell me now? Or, that the tone of voice. So instead of receiving the feedback, there's this, rush to put it over on the other person and criticize what they're doing rather than really receiving. But the thing I wanted to just bring your attention to before we go any further is when you started to talk about this, you did this, you grabbed, you were grabbing here. And I'd love for you to just do that again and feel what's under that, because it looked like your body, your body intelligence was wanting to communicate something to you there.
I think it was a self-soothing, because the overall feeling is I did something wrong, but I like almost like I'm young. I'm like, but
yes, it gets
I tried, I tried, and I'm sorry I missed
I was
it.
hearing cried when you said tried. So, because your hand is on the sadness zone. So
I'm sad. I'm very sad.
yeah, sad. And that's often when there's a loss, and where there's a loss that may be combined with some other thing, like that didn't work, or some difficulty, but that you feel sad about. It was sort of a messy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's also a sense while it was happening of, if you said to me, if you ever wear a shirt with mushroom when you come to my house, I would be really upset. Okay, well, then when I come to your house, I'm not going to wear my mushroom shirt. But if you don't tell me, then when I wear the shirt, I feel like it's on you to say, oh, please don't wear that shirt. And then I would know. It's like people only speak of their boundary when it's violated, is my experience sometimes. And then they resent you that you didn't know that there was a boundary.
Yeah, and yes, I hear that. And that whole discussion about boundaries, and also being careful about your communication, and, does this fit for you? And, I didn't use the right word, and all of that. For me, what is underneath that is a lack of being together. So the issue is about presence, and both of you are sort of in the same space together.
Mm-hmm.
And and so and I've found too that if in different times of my life, when I'm moving into like being more expansive, or I've made a big leap, and I'm now integrating that, and I have a new project that I'm working on that I'm really excited about, not everybody is going to come. So in these big transitions, and what it sounds like is what we would call a vibratory difference. And, many years ago, I may have mentioned this before, but it's just so clear to me, in Thaddeus Golas's book, The Lazy Man's Guide to Enlightenment, which was a book that Gay introduced me to very early. So I was reading it in the early 80s. But one of the things he talked about is when there's a difference in vibration. So one of you has made a leap of some kind, and there are only three choices, really, is that one person tries to bring you back down, or they raise their vibration to be able to meet you, or you split. And I think that this is a very clear illustration of that principle. And for me, it's always been so difficult that, not everybody wants to play, or not everybody is, I was just having this image of being in a roller skating rink of all places, where we used to do roller skating, when I was in high school. And not everybody can keep up, and not everybody has the same interest, and not everybody's going the same direction. And so if you are really enjoying, you can invite. And you can also let them know, here was my experience. But then it gets into that messiness and responsibility of, how responsible am I for your reaction to what's really true for me?
Wow, that's a really big one. And interestingly, this week, you and I had a little bit of a mini version of this, because I did something that I experienced did not work for you. And you gave me feedback in a way that was so inviting. I basically canceled a recording for the third time, or this, it's not the first time.
Right.
I knew when I did it that it was a little bit not the right thing to do, but I really wasn't, whatever. I knew that it was a little off. But the way you responded was you just told me, this is what I would like it to be different next time. If you're going to cancel the thing, let me know soon enough, because I did arrange my day for this to work for me. You gave me the information. There was no shutdown. It wasn't you wrong, you bad.
Right. Yeah.
It was all about, go ahead.
Well, what I was underneath all of that was there was no break for me in our connectedness.
Yes. Yes.
And I wanted to continue making sure that was true. So here's what works for me going forward. I think a sadness at the times that I've shared what really works for me, and other people have said basically too bad.
Yes.
And so having myself lost friendships because, I really I want to know what's really going on. I don't want to know, what your mind says about it. I really want to know what your experience is. And so I want to also just acknowledge the sadness and also I wonder if there's anything that this reminds you of. Is there does it bring up anything from the past that's incomplete that you could also, sort of wrap into this, particular learning?
Mm-hmm. I mean, showing up as myself as a child was not a good activity.
Yeah. So you basically had to hide yourself, and I think that has something to do with the eating choices that you made, and
Yes.
that you basically, my experience with people who have weight issues, not anorexic but the other direction, is that it's a way to protect your inherent deep sensitivity, your sensitivity to the world, and that now as you've been feeling, stronger in your body and stronger in your choices, and able to, use yourself more physically and in other ways, that you're showing up more. And so that showing up, I think, is a challenge to others. So the more I would show up in my uniqueness, lots of other people didn't like that. I would get, criticized for, being, basically too much, like, who do you think you are? What do you have to share? And so, I think it really, for all of us is a opportunity to look at the upper limit. Like, if I expand, is it going to take away from others? So it's a kind of a classic upper limit, and also if I'm going off another direction and and they can't come or don't come, can we still be connected, or is our interaction really more what I would call transactional? I'll do this for you and you do this for me, but not the well of my supporting your being and you supporting my being and choices, which our relationship is founded on.
Yes, I see that deeply. Yeah, it's really my boo this week spoke of this idea of self-selection. Like, people will do something because when you look at the result, the way you gave me feedback and the way I responded brought us closer because it is our intention to be close. And so I
Yes.
heard you, I felt what it must feel like to be told last minute when I've planned my day, like I really let myself feel because you spoke to it. And I knew, I mean, I knew as well, but your speaking of it felt very, thank you. Yeah, this is you're confirming that this is important for you.
Mhm.
Thank you, because now I know not to wear the mushroom shirt or whatever. Like I'm giving you're giving me the keys,
Yes, yes.
which
Well, and also a place where there might have been like a stitch dropped. It's not like the whole weave, has disintegrated, but just to make sure, because I was just remembering that a couple of decades ago, we had a new website, but it was based on old code. I mean, the code that existed then, and a Chinese bot came in and just like sort of pulled the thread on it and pulled the whole thing down. So we lost a whole website because there were not like protections, definitions, boundaries around the code. So it just all came down. And so when I was thinking of Tom Peters said there's no such thing as a minor lapse of integrity. So I think that and that something that doesn't look important to you could be, just monumental for somebody else. But if I hear that there's been a moment of disconnection, that's what I want to repair. Of, how can we keep this, what you were calling the river? How can we keep this flow of connection going? And it's interesting. In this last week, I had a kind of an ending of a relationship where somebody had done for like the 14th time something I had basically asked them not to do. And so that, that was like, I said, basically, don't call me, basically. So at that point, if people don't respect your conditions for connecting, and that's also what I'm listening for, is what's important to you. What's the mode that I can speak, that you can receive, and where I feel the flow. And if I don't feel the flow, that's what I attend to first, not the content. So I think people get caught in the content, like you said that we were going to, and this was our. But what's underneath that is maybe I felt left out, or you didn't ask me ahead of time, or I have more to offer than you might. So and which I think always has a reference to some kind of earlier time in life where I thought I had something to offer and it got rejected.
Yes. Which as a child, when you were asking earlier, I have visceral moments of me making a piece of art, like doing something, and then be so excited and be like, look what I did, and just be completely ignored, if not worse.
Right. Or like, meh, or, oh, or,
why are you wasting your time doing this? Or,
haven't you got more important things to do?
Yeah. And so, okay, so there is that piece. I'm imagining that the people that are listening are imagining situations where they also either communicated in a way that made the other person decide to go away, or they took, like what you said this week, you took also responsibility to say, oh, hey, don't call me. Like I've tried all this time to tell you what matters to me and you've ignored it. So this point, I'm wondering if, like, because the feeling I had throughout was I didn't know what was the right, I didn't know what was the proper, I don't know how to say it. Like what was the proper stance? Like, did I do something wrong? Was there, like
exactly. Did I do this unskillfully? Was I cruel, or was I? And it would be very hard for me to believe that. That you would communicate
about me. You mean that I would
about you? Absolutely, about you. And I still think that underneath this is the feelings, hearing the feelings from either side. And I heard that they said, we were disappointed, but they didn't let you know. They took the leap too. And now you're gone. And now we're done. So that kind of incompletion, my prediction, is going to show up other places in our lives. Because being willing to these are difficult conversations. And I think we all really need, especially now, to know how to have difficult conversations. And so for me, the willingness underneath all of that is, I care about you. I feel that you care about me. I can experience there's a little disruption going on right now. And I'd like to clear that up so that we have that flow of creativity and love that we've always shared. And my sense is that you don't have that kind of relationship with them.
No, clearly, because I feel like I tossed the ball. They didn't like the ball, but they didn't say, all right, well, let's play with this other ball, or let's
play with the ball in another way, or
anything. It was literally be like, get out of the court. And it's, yes. So maybe the inner proper, because I was really trying to accompany myself in a healthy way while it was happening. Like I wanted to parent my inner, because I don't have very many relationships that happen like that in my life. I have nurtured relationships that have flow and that I have that kind of, um, care and deep interest. Like I could have seen a response that was like, we don't like the way you did this, but let's have a conversation. Or, let's in the future, please, like what you did, it was beautiful. In the future, just give me more notice, or let's make sure we don't. And it helped me wake up. Like it helped me grow. It really helped me grow the way you did it. And this does not. It helps no one grow. That's
Well, what I'm also getting from what you're saying is something that I find so valuable in relationship, because you're talking about the toss. You tossed.
Yes.
And I have a whole activity that I created called the basic toss. And we'll include a link for listeners and viewers, because what you did was toss to them and they basically called off the game.
Yes.
So if you were playing pickleball and you shot and they just went bam, and
yes, or worse, they let my ball and they walked out the court.
Right, and walked off the court. So what we call that calling off the game. And calling off the game is classic in our relationships of like rather than being in the messiness of working through something, that there's lots of feelings and remind you of this, and there's just things that need to be clarified and brought to the surface. Instead of doing that, people call off the game.
Yeah.
And so looking at the different ways that you call off the game, I think personally, for me, has been incredibly useful. So one thing I would do is I'd get kind of huffy, I'd kind of get silent and huffy, and, and Gay would say, how are you? Like, fine. That kind of, yeah. So which makes the other person have to come after you and try and interpret what's going on. Or simply, I've seen people, just simply, make an abrupt departure, throw the game down, charge out the door. And I think that's what's going on at more of a global level right now, is that people are, instead of recommitting, like, oh, okay, now how can we create a game tossing that works for both of us? And then getting back into, okay, when that happened, you felt hurt. And I felt scared that I'd done something wrong. And then, for me, then right away, I'm back at that emotional level of connection. And it's okay for me to be vulnerable. It's okay for me to open up and say something that, you might misinterpret. And instead of going bam and smashing me, you'll go, oh, no, that didn't feel good. And I just, my stomach hurt. And then we keep the connection going. We keep that thread of, I can be with you, you can be with me. And then the play, in our Be Play Love, the play is really more about how can we come back into play, because we kind of, we broke the racket, or somebody tossed something over. Yeah.
So when you were speaking of the person who the 14th time, so because at some point, like in this case, you threw the game, you decided that 14 times of trying or whatever many this thing was, at some point you decide to stop playing. There is moments, right, where we can choose.
Yes. Well, we call that high firing. So basically what I said was that, we've had this, this doesn't work for me. My requests have not been honored. So, going forward, I'm not going to interact with you anymore. I'm going to interact with somebody who can, let me know what you're willing to do, what your company is willing to do, what they're not willing to do.
I see. So in difficult conversations, it's funny because I wrote a whole blog about how difficult conversations are sexy to me because they reveal stuff. They're messy, but they also, like, what the alternative is, like, it just gets packed up in there.
Packed up and dense, and also reveals aliveness. So for me, on the heels of a difficult conversation with somebody where we have a mutual commitment to move through it, is always juicier. There's always more openness. And it is sexy in that deep kind of creative, I've opened up more of my core ability to be spontaneous. I don't have to be careful. So I want to be in relationships with the people I care about where we can just be, we can be unedited, especially. And then in that unedited, we can find out what's next.
Yeah, because that creates the messy. It's funny because it reminds me of when I was studying with this woman who was a art therapist. Like we used painting, but as a very deep mean of figuring out
Oh,
ourselves.
yeah, absolutely.
And I remember her saying, like, first of all, you can work on the piece. Like, if you don't like where it's at, you paint over it. You do something different. You tear it. You do something. As long as you continue to interact with it. And what you just said feels like that. Like if it's, I remember in our friendship, Gay and I, years ago, had a moment that was kind of crunchy around some partnership we had built together. And I remember sitting there going like, okay, so for now, our friendship may take a little, it's a season, like we may take a little, but it never felt ruptured. It felt like at this moment, I don't know if it's called repair, we need to, whatever, but my love for him never stopped. I never felt not loved. And so I think it's an art. That's what I want to say. There is an art to the hearing the other person. It's like looping. It's like our exercise of looping. It's like I'm present with you and your need, but I cannot abandon mine.
Exactly.
So where please talk to that.
Yeah, so it's a new I hear you, and what I'm hearing is that you recommit to keeping the game going. So in the basic toss, instead of calling off the game, you commit to keeping the game going and creating new games. So we do it first with a balloon where people toss back and forth, and so and to find out also, how do you call off the game? I think it's really important for everybody to know their sort of their default position of, like they get sulky, or they don't give you enough information, or they tell somebody else instead of telling you. And, there are all of these ways that people call off the game. And to just acknowledge that, yeah, I do that. Yeah, I've done that and it's cost me. But then would you be willing to commit to keeping the game going and inventing new games? And if you mess up, you acknowledge that you mess up, or the other person, or I felt hurt, and then you recommit. And for me, as I've done that, I get to keep having more and more fun. So
Yes.
recommitting and getting back into the game is way more fun than the using and
walk out the
sort
court.
of that second prize of pouting and kind of and I didn't like that, and the kind of adrenaline from being a victim.
Yes.
So really stepping into, hey, this is what I want. I felt hurt, and I feel kind of scared to say this, but I just want to reinvent things because I didn't like what happened.
Nice.
Rather than doing a huffy and
Yeah.
making an abrupt departure.
That's really good. Like I want to reinvent is really a cool, okay, this way didn't work. So let's come up. But then maybe less relationships, because one, a lot of people are not going to want to play. And two,
Exactly.
it takes a good amount of time and energy to keep keep the river really clean and
Yeah,
going.
absolutely, absolutely. I was just thinking as you were saying this, one of my friends from several years ago, she and her wife um, invented something they call a do-over.
Ah,
So, like one of them would come home from work and they would sort of get in, right, 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 and somebody would say, do over, and she'd go out the door,
literally go back out and come back
go out
in.
the door and come back in again. And I love the whole idea of do over. Like,
Do you
yeah, we
think I
messed
could
this one
respond
up.
that to their? So what is what would you recommend? Like in a moment like this, when they say we need space in this relationship, do I not respond? Like, do I stop it right there, or do I respond? I hear you. Good. Like what's what is a healthy response?
Well, what I would do is, and what's worked for me is, first I acknowledge my feelings. I felt hurt.
Okay.
So I felt angry. So hurt is a combination of angry and sad. I felt angry that you didn't respond to me for 2 weeks.
Mhm.
Because I was wondering, and I felt sad that rather than having a further conversation, you just shut the door. And so my feelings, and then I would also say, here's what I want. Here's
Mhm.
what I really want. So I'd like you to check in with what you really want, because I'm not sure that you really want to continue you don't want to continue the relationship at this particular level where they have to be the victim and you have to be the bad guy. You have to be the villain.
You wouldn't say that in the response, would you? You wouldn't. You're asking me. You just said, I don't know.
I'm just saying that to you, but I think it's really important for you to get clear about what you really want. So given this, are these people that you want to continue to play with? Because if it is, because I've had people that, I really care about, and then we've had, something has happened. And, I may need some space to just be with my feelings about it. But I can say, and I would like to reinvent.
Yes.
I want to know if you want to.
I do. I really would. I really would. They are people I really care deeply about. And maybe that's why the hurt was as much as it was, because there's other people who would have been like, okay, bye. Like, no, lots of people in my life, it's fine. This is not that. This really was, I love what we had, and I would like to reinvent is a beautiful, it's funny because we're at the end of our show for this one, but when you said that, it's like my whole body, like even as you were talking, I was still aware, my shoulders were kind of tight, but when you said that, because that brings back creativity, that brings back, okay, well, what color do we try,
Right, let's just throw all that out, let's get some new colors, let's get some new,
I love that. So I can imagine. So yes, my text could be, my response could very well be, wow, this didn't work. So are you interested in reinventing how we do this differently? I could say that. That feels very genuine.
Yeah. And what I noticed is that you look alive and flowing as you say it.
Yes, I did. Very much, very much. Do you think it's still important that we share our feelings? Like I say, it was really weird that I was sad. What was it?
Well, you have shared your feelings. You've shared them with me. You don't, it's not always possible to share them with that person for one reason or another. But I do think it's really important that you share your feelings.
So that I process my side.
Well, even not so much even processing, because that whatever that means, but the flow of your feelings gets expressed.
Okay, I like that. That's a good description. Thank you. This is, I'm searching, is there any lingering, but there isn't. I feel.
Well, that's a great thing to search for also. Yeah. Is there anything lingering? And when I'm having those kinds of discussions, that's something that I'll ask myself and the other person or people of, is there anything else? Is there anything that's lingering, anything that's wanting to be expressed, any completion? Anything that you would say, but maybe you're scared to say. And so that at the end we go, oh.
Yeah, did you hear it? That breath? I literally just had this deep breath of like, okay. It's like a good shower, like just a good, This was, I hope this was helpful for the listeners, because this was, thank you. Like I knew.
Thank you for bringing it up. Yeah, the whole experience of letting ourselves be more open with the people that we care about and so many of us have been punished for telling the truth or for saying, no, I don't agree. And so learning how to navigate that, my sense is takes practice. And I'm imagining that people will get some information about how they can practice from what we've been talking about.
What a blessing that sometimes I have moments of like, I must have been so good along the way of my lives that I get to be friends with you and have you help me when I'm in the mess, and just help me kind of like pull the threads and then see what's there. It's so, I'm so grateful that you love me.
Well, I'm so grateful that we love each other, and that you also will say to me like, well, is there something else going on in your throat?
Yeah.
So that that there is that sense of we can be honest with each other.
Yeah.
We can be open with each other. And I value that very highly. And so thank you.
Thank you, love. Thank you so much for this one.